Nothing will teach you to keep your mouth shut in a moment like Facebook memories, right? Not that I was, and it wasn't public. I didn't get in trouble. Like, it was nothing. It was set to private. I was always very much like, none of my coworkers are going to see this. It's just my college buddies, whatever. But, like, you could see Facebook memories. And when I was 23, the absolute weird stuff that I would spew onto Facebook, right, is coming back to me daily.
On this episode of Jaywalking, I'm with the very funny Dave Shay. He's actually got an amazing story as an educator who was a paraprofessional for 15 years, decided to switch into being an English teacher. He's an amazing comic too, so we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a lot of interesting stuff. We're even going to talk about some current events in the most tasteful way you've ever seen them talked about. So make sure you listen, post, comment, do all the things, support the show. We love you for listening. Enjoy this episode of Jaywalking. I'm in the house today with very special guest, Dave Shay. How are you today?
Great, Jay. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here, man. Like, I was thinking about it because it's back to school time. So last week I talked a lot about my own experience back to school. How's it been for you back to school?
Great. It's amazing. Like, this year I have a uniquely good schedule. So it's not just I like my rosters better, but I also have a better situation in the district. I'm in between schools. And so...
and what do you teach? You can remind me.
I teach English, but I had come from special ed. So, I had been a para for a long time. And during the pandemic, I was like, what am I doing? I got my master's degree in English. Like, let's just get state certified and do this thing.
So, so like you go to, you graduate high school, you go to college, I'm assuming, right?
Yep.
And then you get
LaSalle,
done.
4 years at LaSalle for radio.
Oh,
right?
really?
Yeah, radio, TV, and film I was trying to do. But then when I graduated, I was like, do I want to move to Buffalo for $300 a week? It just wasn't really like a career track that seemed promising.
Is that the mecca for, is that just where the job offer
I
was?
say Buffalo meaning like not like in the middle of nowhere, somewhere across the country.
Yeah, WKRZ in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Bringing you the traffic report at the 9s with Dave Shay.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, gosh. This traffic report is brought to you by Pork, the Other White Meat.
Beef, it's what's for dinner. No, that's cool. So you at some point say to yourself, okay, that path's not working.
Yeah.
Then you go back to school.
I did sales for a year,
okay.
And then I was like, cubicle life isn't for me. And then my mom had been a teacher. I was like, the school district near me was hiring long-term subs, and I was like, okay, well, I'll do that while I figure out what I'm doing.
Get your feet wet.
And I knew I had liked English and stuff like that. I was like, let me teach English. I started slowly taking English classes for grad credits, but while I was doing that, I was a paraprofessional. They're like, we need a classroom aide for a special needs classroom. And I was like, well, I'll do that. There's like benefits. It had like a decent salary. You didn't need a master's degree in a particular area. You just needed an undergrad. So I was like, so I did that. And I was like, I'll be a paraprofessional while I do grad school to teach English. But the thing was, it was like a really fun job.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask what kind of classroom, because paraprofessional, like, and if you're listening and you are a paraprofessional, it's like it's like very ambiguous in terms of what you could be doing.
It's everywhere now. When I started in 2007, there were only like 3 or 4 paras per building, and I was in the MD room, so I would have kids with autism, kids with Down syndrome, kind of just like a mix of special needs kids, and it was a really fun job. It was a good fit for me, for my personality.
Yeah.
And my ex-wife, my now ex-wife at the time, was an ER nurse, and we didn't have kids, so we were like making enough money. And I was like, let me just chill in this job and see if I want to do special ed instead. I stayed a para for a long time, and I was like, you kind of get in a job you like that pays enough and you have benefits, and you're like, I can kind of just coast on this for a while, and I did.
I'm glad you said that, because I mean, like my daughter has the same para, or really is not an ABA specialist, but same variety of, like, she needs an aide to help her with coping or transitions within the classroom. Academically, she's good. She just needs someone to help her keep on track and help navigate, so the teacher doesn't have to do, because the teacher's trying to control the other 26 kids as well.
Sure, yeah.
So she just needs a little extra assistance, and we've had a revolving door since she was in services as young as like 3. Of people who were in this role with her that either would be in the community. Like last night, she got to cheer with the varsity cheerleaders.
Oh, nice.
Because she's on a special needs team in one of the rec leagues, and it was the night where they all come together, and for the first quarter, they cheer with the big girls. And but like Miss Kia was there with her, and Miss Kia, we've had, my wife made a post last night of the two of them having like this cute moment on the sidelines, and we're just so grateful because before that it was a revolving door, and now we've had Miss Kia for like the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm like, wow, and she's going through puberty and all these other things, so it's so grateful that we have an anchor. So it's like when I hear somebody say they like the job and they want to stay in the job, that means so much to me as someone from the other side of the coin who's the parent saying, wow, it's so great to hear that there's, because it's like almost like a calling sometimes, that and so to know that somebody wants to stay in that position and it's not just because of the benefits and the coasting. So it's cool to hear. I like that. So you stayed that for a while, and then you're like,
did that for like 15 years.
Wow.
Got divorced a little before the pandemic, and then COVID gave everyone their own kind of little like shake up. What's it all about, man? George Bailey, you're like
the biggest shake up of my life. I'll tell you that much.
So during the pandemic, I was like, let me like do this. I have this English master's that's almost done. Let me just finish it. I was doing the classes nice and slowly, leisurely pace.
Yes.
And actually, the pandemic is also what got me back into stand-up, which I hadn't done in a while. Yeah. That's kind of how we met.
That's right. Yeah, I even mentioned you before. I probably talked about it up front. We didn't talk about that yet. But yeah, that's right. I was so grateful because I teach, and most of the people know, I teach stand-up at Soul Joel's in Pottstown. And yeah, you came to one of the classes, and it's always nice when someone who's been doing it for a while is in the class, because you always need... I like when I teach languages, I like that sometimes I have kids from like different like grade levels, because you get a maturity level or an experience level sometimes that, can rub off on the others, or they can kind of see that. So, you had such charisma that
thanks, man.
It makes sense when you say you were suited for the because you have to like chaos, and that's how stand-up is a little bit. You can have what you're planning on saying, but the room might not let you say it that
That's
day.
Right.
And that's very much like the chaos of what it would be, I would imagine, as a para.
Yeah, that's cool that you had language students, where I imagine teaching a language would be mad better if you had a student that was used to that language already.
Well, and sometimes you do. Sometimes you have kids who have either they speak other languages at home, and so this is just like if you're a juggler and you're juggling 4 balls, what's it to throw a fifth at that point?
Right.
When you're at 2 trying to go to 3, it's a big jump.
Sure.
But like I think for some of those kids, and I have one now who I think speaks Russian at home.
Wow.
And she's just on top of it. As well with like I think she's in my Latin class, but like it's just interesting to see how well some of them do that clearly speak other languages at home, and that helps because I think that's another thing where it's not such a big deal for the others now.
That's awesome.
That's
really cool. I feel like as a teacher, you would be able to not use that person as like a little co-teacher. You know what I mean? But if they're already used to it, they could see what the common pitfall might be, or or if you learned it through going to school to teach, but someone spoke it as their native tongue, I feel like that would be a lot better. I have a lot of respect for language teachers. I don't know that I could teach a language that isn't my native language.
Yeah, I think with any position, there's a ton of imposter syndrome.
Okay.
And with language, no different. I'm preparing this keynote for a conference I'm at next weekend, and I talk a lot about my life. It's basically my life through, and I talk a lot about my decision to switch into that and the imposter syndrome I kind of felt for a while. I couldn't roll my R's for the longest time. I couldn't do, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so I'm like, some of these things. And then when I got back I studied in Argentina in high school. I didn't really take it seriously, so I didn't come away fluent or anything of the nature. I was 16.
Yeah.
I was able to smoke Cubans and drink. So there was my education. Yeah. Now it was the summer, so it was bonus. It was like bonus time,
Yeah.
So I was treating it as such. And then, but in college, I had gotten away from Spanish, and then in college, my advisor was a Spanish teacher, and she asked me to consider if I was also studying Latin, that I might be more marketable if I had a background in Spanish. Maybe I should consider it. And I went to Madrid, and because I was on the hook for the money, I took it very seriously. And that was where I kind of left the 6 months there, and I vowed to myself I would learn from what my 16-year-old self didn't do 4 years ago, and I would stay away from all the people that spoke English.
Yeah.
I would force myself to really interact, and I did. I became a little bit of an introvert, like away from the group, and I found I became a regular at a bar.
Okay.
I was like always at the home of these like 3 old sisters that had this beautiful penthouse apartment that their parents had left to them in the middle of the city of Madrid.
Wow.
And so I just kind of found myself immersed in that, and that helped. And then when I got home, I'm like, oh, well, I just built this 6-month like pump on the bike. Like, what am I going to do now that the bike's stopping?
Yeah, right.
And my professor at Ursinus, her name was Sochiel Shuru. I don't even know if she's still there, but she's just an amazing sweetheart. She had a friend at the Cardinal Bevilacqua Center. I don't even know if it's still there in Kensington.
Okay.
And she's like, oh, well, we can go volunteer there. And I didn't know what that meant. Like, am I sweeping floors? What am I doing? And when I got there, they asked me to run a GED in Spanish class.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't think I could do that.
Yeah.
But like, so I'm teaching chemistry and American history and Spanish. And that was the first time that I got kind of pushed into it. But I just realized that those people were just so grateful to have somebody.
Okay.
They were going to overlook any errors I made in the language.
Yeah.
And I was going to overlook some of the errors they were making.
Okay.
You know, so I think once I did that, I became less scared because now I was like, oh, I'm doing this, or, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember
Total immersion, right?
Yeah, so
Practice
I think that helps. But yeah, now with some of these kids, one of the things I like to do is I watch them the first quarter, and then the second quarter, like to your point, some of those kids who maybe have that skill set, I put them in groups, and I make each group have like someone who's like that, someone really high functioning, 2 in the middle, and 1 struggling, and then they sort of have like tasks, like, you know, they get points for like if their homework completion average is high, so they're kind of encouraging each other to, you know, do well on their quizzes and tests. So I try to use them in that sense without making it known that I'm like, it's like subverted.
Pulling the strings.
Yeah, but it tends to work because now you have those kids encouraging the other kids instead of me being the only one, you know, barking at this. You kind of create a community, hopefully.
That's
great.
Yeah. What's teaching Latin like? That's got to be
It's so much fun because it's like you can do anything.
Yeah.
You can really, you know, I rotate through several things. Obviously, there's the vocab. We have to learn the words. Otherwise, we can't do the translation. That's why I joke with the kids. I'm like, hey, guys, you got to learn your vocab, because if I was going to start a lawnmower business and I didn't have a lawnmower, I wouldn't be a very good business. So a lot of it's vocab, but then the cool offshoot of that is I'll give them like 10 to 15 derivatives per list that are just higher functioning English words. Like one of our words now is cocus for cook. So we talked about a derivative is precocious. I want it to be something that's not super obvious, but it's clearly derived from that. Because then I get to like explain it to them. Like, well, think about it. Precocious means advanced at a young age. Yeah. That means that your brain was cooking a little longer than the average kid, so now it's ready to eat a little bit sooner. You know, well, I'm not going to eat your brains, but like, you get to have some fun with how they might think or associate the words. So now they're becoming like little detectives. Am I going to see some words in my English class or my essay now that are higher advanced? So I like that part of it is cool. And then obviously we're reading texts that are about Roman life. So then obviously the topics about how the Romans lived, which then obviously influenced us. I mean, the first day I'd take a dollar bill. I bring a bunch of dollar bills, and I was passing them out, and they're all excited because they think they're getting paid. And then they just look on the back for all the symbols that are still being printed on there. And, you know, so there's so much embedded in our own history and culture. I mean, well, the founding fathers decided that we're going to put a pyramid on the back and the base is going to have 1776 in Roman numerals, or E pluribus unum is on the ribbon in the eagle's mouth, or an olive branch is in one of the talons of the eagle with the arrows in the other. So we just kind of look at, well, why are these phrases, of all the things in the world that they could have put on this dollar bill, like pains, I mean, that's a choice. That's like a tattoo. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, why would they put this on there? And then you get to kind of have some debates. My favorite is oratory. Okay. Because it's like the art of public speaking. Yeah. And so I have this book that I got of like what if scenarios, you know? And so, like, you know, would you rather sleep in a leaky canoe in a lake or on a pool floaty, you know? And then all of a sudden, is a hot dog a sandwich? You know, like, this kind of stuff. And, you know, kind of brings me to something I wanted to talk a little bit about, is because I think we've been, to not talk a little bit about what happened with Charlie Kirk this week, is someone who is bringing that to the world, to college campuses, this Prove Me Wrong tour he'd been doing. And regardless of how people feel, I know the minute I said the 2 words, it's like when you say, when you're a comic and you say like something in the set, you're like, oh, well, the audience is going to turn off. I have nothing to say politically about it, but in terms of what he was doing, I think that was interesting that we're going to college campuses and getting people to come flock and have debate and talk and use logic. So as a Latin teacher, those are the skills I'm trying to impart.
Right.
You know, and what a horrific thing to see happen on a college campus. You know what I mean?
Scary.
Like what a horrific.
Yeah.
And my interesting thing is like I just kind of sat back from it and I just was like, you know, moved schools a lot, so I always was the one who was kind of the wallflower. Like, let me see the new environment I'm in before I make a step, you know? And that's how I felt with this. Like, I didn't put anything out, I didn't post about it, but I'm watching everybody in my circle, everybody in my network react vehemently to this.
Yep.
And it was so interesting to see the different parts because I didn't know a ton about this guy. I did not know a lot about Charlie Kirk, as I imagine a lot of people didn't until this happened. And now, you know, maybe you'd seen his things online of when those people were debating, which I loved. But to see some people react, like a lot of my friends who are black, whether it's black comedians or just black people I grew up with, watching how they reacted, clearly some of the rhetoric, as I started watching some of the things they posted, I started seeing some of that. Then I have a lot of friends and family who were on the right side of things, and I'm watching a lot of their personal videos or the memes they choose to show. I'm like, wow, okay, then there's this side. So it was almost like flipping through the different news stations just to see the different sides. Like, oh, let me watch like 10 minutes of Fox News now. Let me watch a little bit of MSNBC. Let me watch a little bit of Newsmax. So it was just really interesting for me to see how everybody's taking it in. You know?
Absolutely, yeah. The algorithm also, my algorithm started to get very conspiratorial.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I would see these takes, and I have a certain amount of sympathy for people that have conspiratorial thinking.
Yeah.
Because I get the temptation, right? I really do appreciate the temptation to think that the truth is more interesting than what it might be, right? Yeah. And, of course, I guess they found someone, right? They found the
yes.
the
So
shooter
yesterday morning they revealed that they had him in custody, and unfortunately, I don't believe they know anything more about it other than the messages on the shell casings, because he's not talking. From my understanding, the only thing that I had heard was that his father was the one who had seen the images that the FBI released, called him and said, "Hey, this looks like you. Is this you?" And then through him and a family friend, they were able to kind of keep him occupied until they were able to get authorities.
Yeah. So some of the stuff I was seeing was like, you know, Tucker Carlson had said that Jeffrey Epstein was a sleeper agent for Netanyahu or something like that. And the idea is that Charlie Kirk had maybe got too close to the third rail with like the Epstein stuff, you know.
Really?
And the idea was that you could simultaneously sacrifice him for ideological warfare against the left and blame it on the left like a false flag, but at the same time you can like nip it in the bud with this like Epstein stuff.
These are the same people that are taking Taylor Swift songs and be like, "There's a red ribbon in the background, so this is what it means." And
I appreciate the thought process, and I like.
That's the English teacher in you being like, I like that you're looking at the imagery. I like that you're thinking about foreshadowing.
Well, and there was this like mysterious plane that took off. Here's the thing about conspiracy theories in general. You know that mathematically the occasional conspiracy is true.
Yeah. Like
1 out of 10 will say. You can argue about the ratio that you feel is true, but we know that there are conspiracies, right?
Yeah.
People, Watergate, President Nixon got caught doing something very unusual, like robbing a hotel for files, right? But like, had they not been caught, you know that there's stuff like that out there going on that has just never been caught, right? So when someone has a conspiracy theory, it is simultaneously plausible, right? But you also have to entertain the idea that the universe wasn't that interesting on that day, right? You know what I mean? And so like there's a certain kind of mindset where your thinking has to be flexible enough that you can consider it as plausible, but also like maybe just the simplest version of the story is true, you know, or something like that.
100%.
Yeah.
So. I did when I was at Ursinus, there was a group that was together, and I had a lot of friends who were like either philosophy majors. Yeah. And at Ursinus, you take a course your freshman year, regardless of your major, and it's called CIE, the Common Intellectual Experience. Yeah. And most people at first were groaning about the concept, but every professor has to teach it. Every freshman has to take it. and it's guided by 3 questions, and you do a survey of literature. So you start at like Gilgamesh and Beowulf, and you go all the way through the founding fathers, Freud, Hitler, all sorts, Bhagavad Gita, Quran, like all the things. And there were 3 questions that guide you through each book. What does it mean to be human? What is your role in the universe? And what does it mean to be good?
Yeah.
And so you're now in a room full of all different people from all different backgrounds, maybe a biology professor. I had a biology professor for my freshman semester, and I had a philosophy professor for my second semester of it. So again, very different takes at the same time. You're in a group full of people of different religions and different. So it was interesting to hear everybody's perspective as you would read something and then talk about it, whether it was Hinduism, whether it was, the Marxism or whatever. And so that was very eye-opening for me because those were not the kind of things that were being introduced to me. And these are, again, going back to like what I think a lot of people are praising what Charlie Kirk was doing is that these were experiences most youth aren't having. They're not being challenged and then having to verbally explain themselves in a coherent and cogent discussion. And so promoting that is great. Oh my God, that's huge. So when I see people talking about that part of it, I'm like, oh, I'm on board with that. That's great. But yeah, the conspiracy stuff, like, and it's almost the other side too, because then you have a lot of people that are going heavy religious, and at this course at Ursinus, there was a group of people and they met, and it was like a religion and philosophy. And the first meeting, I only went to one, but they had us say what we thought the definition of religion is. And they said the archaic definition is scrupulous conformity.
Interesting. Okay.
Which is just full agreement, no questions asked.
Scrupulous meaning careful?
So scrupulous, meaning like, you're just like all in, like, you're not considering.
Or practical.
Practical.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're just like on board, no matter what, no questions asked, we're in.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting because it makes sense. Like, obviously, religion was a part of civilization because we need to work together for a common cause. And I get that. I remember going to France. I had opportunities through my education to go travel with, groups in the summers. And we were outside of the Notre Dame. And outside of is these like relief sculptures along the side. And it's the Book of Revelations. So it's all the what's going to happen to you and the doom. Yeah. And they mentioned the tour guide had mentioned, oh, well, these are here to evoke a feeling because at the time, most people were not literate. And so they wanted what was on the outside here to reflect what was being taught on the inside so that as you walked back, it was sort of an advertisement of, hey, you need to be a good person so that this does not happen to you. And then that brings me to CIE. I'm like, oh, well, now we have to have discussions. What does it mean to be good? And then how each of these groups are interpreting that is what I'm thinking about. And I'm like, because, I have no hard stance on anything. I grew up in such a weird family that was not the norm, that was not that like I went to 7 different schools. I lived in 12 different apartments and houses, K to 12. So like we were moving a lot. Yeah. And it was just so interesting for me. I mean, the first neighborhood I lived in was half Orthodox Hasidic Jewish people, half black families, and then me and my lesbian moms in the middle, So it's like
that old chestnut.
Yeah. So it's like that concept for me, I was always in a very unique position. So the only thing I was saying personally, when I started saying, well, now I got to process my own feelings about it. And when I looked at some of his stuff, the only thing that applied to me directly is that clearly he did not talk positively about my family's lifestyle and the way my parents lived. And, and so anytime that happens, you're obviously having a feeling you feel about that. And I'm just like, well, I know that would not be something he would preach. And if somebody was going to say that, oh, well, families need to look like this, well, then I'm like, okay, so you're telling me I'm not okay here.
Right.
And then I feel a certain way.
Of course. Yeah.
Then I feel a certain way. But I'm not feeling a certain way that then makes me need to make a video or do whatever. Just I know in my heart, like, some of those ideals, but we don't have to share the same ideals. That's the beauty of all of this. Just as long as you're not telling me I have to, or you're not telling me my parents have to go against how they feel. And as long as that's the case and that's the country we live in, then, this is just a blip in our kind of history right now that I think we need to find ways to have the dialogue without hitting the big red button.
The discipline to not have an immediate take on social media, I think, for me, I was always very poor at that in my 20s. But what has helped me, Facebook memories?
Yeah.
So, okay, Nothing will teach you to keep your mouth shut in a moment like Facebook memories, right? Not that I was, and it wasn't public. I didn't get in trouble. Like, it was nothing. It was set to private. I was always very much like, none of my coworkers are going to see this. It's just my college buddies, whatever. But like, you could see Facebook memories. And when I was 23, the absolute weird stuff that I would spew onto Facebook, right, is coming back to me daily, right? So you're like, okay, so you're 42 now, and you're like, okay, here's what I said on this day when I was 38, 33, 29, 25, right? And it's like a reverse evolutionary chart. You're like, okay, I could see, like, 2 years ago, I was clearly obsessed with The Sopranos, you know? All right, 5 years ago during the pandemic, I was watching this. And then you go, oh, when I was 23, it'll be a reaction to the news, and I won't even know the context. It'll just be something like me as a 22-year-old writing, good, I'm glad that happened to him. Or something, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
Like, so,
yeah, exactly.
And then you go, not only do I not know what that was about now, but I'm kind of glad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
That's right.
So, like, the idea, so the only reaction I made, and because you were talking a lot about Philly's Karen, and
Yes.
so, like, I waited like a hot 48 hours, and then I posted, I threw together a meme of Philly's Karen this week, and then that meme of the, like, Muppet monkey who's looking in the corner of their eye to see if, like, people are paying attention to him, right? And so, like, not that, you know, the Philly's Karen thing was just getting to a point where everyone was a lot of people were starting to go, okay, this lady needs a break now, right? You know, like, some people were right? And she got it. She got her break, for better or worse, right? Like,
Yeah, well, nobody knows who she is.
no one knows who she is. You know, I don't know what's going on in her personal life, but like this major news event was the cutoff switch for Philly Karen, I think, to start going about her business, right?
Well, so a bar near me, they're really big into making magnets for cars. They're called Railroad. They're out in Limerick. They went right to print, and last Thursday they released, hey, if you come by at 4:30, we have 200 of these. It was Cruella de Vil. It said Cruella de Vil, and it was her in the thing. And I'm like, oh my god, they jumped right on, and they're like, we need to send this to print right now.
one of the, that's, first of all, that's amazing. And then I love when there's memes that are kind of mashing up different news events. So the silliest one I saw was a picture of the lady, like, you know, she's holding the ball, and a lot of people are doing the My Precious,
Yes.
Gollum. Well, there's another one I saw where she's standing looking forward, and there's a man with his arms wrapped around her, and it's the guy from the Coldplay concert.
Oh.
It was just beautiful, man. Like,
That's like when Scooby Doo would have like the Harlem Globetrotters on it. You're like, they're together.
Yes. Yeah, I love those pop culture moments of just like,
when they're just bringing those forces together. You're like, oh, it's like when all the singers got together and sang "We Are the World."
Yeah.
It's like, it is. It is such an interesting time right now, and like, I hope everybody just sort of like takes a breath. You know, we kind of get back to center. Just the volatility of it all, like, and you know, and then obviously the news pokes at it. Like I put on like CNN for a minute yesterday, and I could feel the fear of them like saying how much Civil War had been mentioned, and like some of these things that, you know, it's almost scary to think or say out loud about. Because you're like, oh, like, I'm like, you know, you hear that, you're thinking, no, that's Abe Lincoln stuff, you know, like that's you know, and you're not, but then it made me reflect on all the people that I'm friends with and that I care about in my life. And I'm watching them all have very different reactions that if we had a moment where they all came together, it wouldn't be pretty.
no.
Like, you know, and so that makes me sad because these are all people I care about in my life at some point, whether it's people in my family or my extended family, or whether it's people that I've met just that are comics that I've grown to be like brothers to me. Like, I was an only child, so I've like always dying for connections with other people. And that's what I love so much about comedy, and that's what I love about so much about networking. And so it's like, I love the connection. That's why when people ask me, well, why'd you start studying languages? Cool, because I wanted to make friends with more people.
Yeah.
If I know more languages, I could talk to more people.
Absolutely.
You know, when I first started realizing Spanish would be something I could speak was, and I mentioned on the podcast before, it was a cruise I was on when I was like 15 or 16. There were 60 girls from Panama, this rich girl's quinceañera. So she invited like 59 of her closest friends, and they like invaded the ship in the teen club, and that's I was 15. I was like a sophomore in high school, so like I was in the teen club the whole time, you know, because it was just me. I'm an only child, so I left my mom's to go do whatever they were doing, and then I went to the teen club. And just that's when I would start talking to them, and like, or I had a crush on one, and I remember we had a kiss the last night, and I was like,
Nice.
and you're like, I'm just trying to tell her like words like bonita, like whatever I could think to like, and I was just like, oh man, I wish I could. I clearly had a connection with this person, as silly as it was, as whatever puppy love it was.
Sure.
I had a connection with this person. I still have a photo of her somewhere in like my mom's scrapbooks from the trip.
Formative memories.
I know, and it's just like, and that was a moment I shared with someone. I remember getting home, and it was like the film, like the real film. And I would be like, we had to stop at Ames, which was this department store that had like a section in the back where you could drop it off and come back like 2 days later. And I'm thinking, wow, how crazy is that to be like, I had to wait.
Okay, Grandpa.
Yeah, I had to wait to see if it was going to come out. Like,
So I'm not one of these, the kids today don't know the thing, but like getting photo developed and not knowing how it comes out for like a week or whatever it might be. Like, 24 hours if you rush to do it.
Yep.
Sometimes it's like, we went to Disney World. Like, I can see those pictures in 6 months. I don't need to go out to CVS tomorrow, right? 6 months later, like, it could be like, you just didn't know.
Yeah.
Right? Like, now we take 12 of the same exact photo just so that like one
somebody's
will,
not blinking their eyes in it.
Just so that one will be minutely better than the other, right? And you could tell, no, we got to do that again, or we're good, let's move on. 6 months later, you could be like, oh, here's me in Disney with like, like my face was behind the flagpole. Like there's that memory gone, like so the photo, getting photo developed to me is one of the, also seeing the little reels, and there was something interesting. It had like a mystery to it. You're like, what's on there? Or you'd be like, is this one from Disney or is this one from Six Flags?
Yeah.
Or or like whatever. Or here's a mystery one. I don't even know what this is from, right? And you wouldn't be able to preview it. So it had like a tiny little scavenger hunt feeling of dopamine hitting.
So I remember when I was in Madrid, when I went and studied abroad in college, it was 2003, and I had a camera with me with rolls, and I got a big pack.
Yeah.
Well, we declared war in Iraq while I was there, and I lived right across the street from this very famous McDonald's because it looks like a very sleek, probably the coolest looking McDonald's in the world.
Yeah.
It's like an old train station that had been converted into a McDonald's, and that's where they held protests. Whenever there's a protest and that involved America, where do you go? Mm-hmm. McDonald's.
Yeah.
But it was on my way home from school. And so as I was coming home from school, I noticed the roadway to like where my side street was off of the main way in what's considered, it's literally called Broadway. It's Grand Via, which is all the big posters of the playhouses were just a block down from there. So I'm like trying to just do my normal thing, come home, and I see a big crowd, and I'm kind of like going and seeing what's up. And some woman like looked at me and she's like, yeah, you probably don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And so I took a long way back, and then I got back, and I had a little balcony on my like fourth floor thing that overlooked the McDonald's. So I went up and started taking photos. And I didn't realize it, but when I put the roll in, it was the bonus roll that was black and white.
Oh wow!
So all the files
negatives.
of the all these photos I have of the SWAT team coming and like subduing the crowd eventually was all in black and white. So it looked like I was in the 1960s instead of 2003.
You look like Woodward and Bernstein.
Yeah, so it was like, so I was like, but I didn't know that until I developed them. I'm like, oh my God, how poetic that it was these type of photos in front of a McDonald's with like the SWAT team.
Yeah, the Zapruder films over here.
That was, it was so crazy.
Yeah.
But like, it's so funny to just think about all of that.
Dude, you've had an interesting life, man.
It's
this
crazy.
This is good fodder. I'm glad you're turning this into content of some kind or another. Did you happen to see Jordan Jensen's new stand-up special? She's a very funny comedian.
No, I know who she is because she has two moms too.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I thought of that.
Yeah, so I was like,
she talks about having three moms because she has her two adopted lesbian moms, and then she has her biological mom, and her dad passed. So she talks about having like three moms, and I was like, this is
right.
Like,
As I was like, that's why she was at Soul Joe's at one point when I was working there before I was a comic, and I just remember that because I remember like, oh wow, she has two moms. I'm like, yeah, but is your dad also gay? Is your mom's brother also gay? I'm like, no, I got more gay than you. Yeah. Everybody, I'm like the Marissa Tomei of gays. Her family's a mechanic. Everybody in my family's gay.
Yeah.
So it's like, so it's funny because I'm always interested when something that's so unique to people comes out because that's something even as I'm thinking about the talk I'm giving next week, it's my thing is like laughing through the curveballs of life, teaching parenting and perseverance. And so the whole notion of it is me sharing my life almost like a 9-inning game.
Yeah.
And so it's all the innings, but each inning is sort of a conflict or a problem that had arose along the way and how it shaped and the people who were around me at the time and the anchor of baseball in my life. Because for me, baseball was always a hard passion. And, and so that to me has always been a part of my life. So no matter where I was moving, they all had a baseball team. I could bring my mitt and my ball. I had that with me. And then I had people who were educators in my life who were just sweet people that made me feel safe when I was in some of these places. And those two things are what I needed to keep me on track through all the chaos of all of these things.
Of course.
And giving me opportunities like going to Argentina, going to Spain, things I wouldn't have, people that I grew up with never left the county, never mind the country. Yeah. So I was given all these opportunities, and now I'm like kind of processing how all of that led me to be the teacher I am now, the dad I am now, and then now having, based on the fact the family I had, to have queer roots and straight branches. Well, what does it mean? Like,
where had you lived the longest when you were moving around?
So, Carbondale, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
From
how far is that?
So that is like right outside of Scranton. So about 2 hours, 2:15 north of us. And we moved there in third grade. I had moved, my dad actually had swooped in and got custody of me for a short stint in fourth grade. And then I came back. So from like 5th through 10th, I lived there.
Okay.
Which was great.
So is that still Phillies country or not really?
So you know what? It's Yankees country because it used to be because the AAA team is the Yankees now.
Okay.
But you're closer to New York than you were Philly.
Oh, gotcha.
So it was like an hour and a half to get to Yankee Stadium. It was like 2.5 to get to the Phillies Stadium. So you were in this kind of weird mix of both.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I'd say more were Yankees fans to be honest, and now they have the Yankees AAA there. But it was the Red Barons growing up, and that was the AAA before the Lehigh Valley.
Okay.
But yeah, so that area. But and again, I love going back there. I consider that to be kind of like home for me because even wherever I lived, we lived in that area. It was all of that area. Then there was the one stint to Susquehanna, which was almost in the New York border.
Oh, interesting.
That I spent with my dad when he was still straight. He was still pretending to be straight, and he married another woman. And then and he tried to swoop me away. Because I was thinking about that in my talk. Like in third grade, he was like trying to tell the nuns at my Catholic school, like, oh, this guy's living in sin with his, to try to get custody. He was just trying to do what he thought he had to do to get custody of me. But it was such a tumultuous thing. And if I didn't have a really good third grade teacher that year, Mrs. Utag, I don't know that I would have survived that year.
Shout out to Mrs. Utag.
You know what I mean? And like that was huge for me. And so like those are some of the things that I've been reflecting on as I've been writing this about just these moments that I've had and these things that have happened to me that to me just seemed like things that happened. But when I say them out loud to other people, they're like, that's crazy. So it's been cool to share that. It's been cool that it's worked out the way it's worked out for me that now I can share all of those experiences because these are a bunch of early educators at it's a conference for that. So like they're dealing with kids that were like me, I mean? So like I want them to be thinking about the fact that these kids coming in could have things like this going on at home. Yeah. And hey, if you're going to do a family tree project, maybe think twice about it. Like sometimes that was traumatic for me. So like when I started doing it in Spanish class, I would do like you could also do TV families.
Okay.
You could do Roseanne. You could do The Simpsons.
Yeah.
That way you're still using the vocab because that's all I care about for the project.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm not forcing you to bring up these memories or have to go to your family and say, hey, can we talk about this side of the family that we never see? You know what I mean? Like, so I wanted that because I felt like I didn't have a tree. I had like more of a shrub, I was like, well, maybe I should just go to CVS and take all the families out of the photo frames and use those and pretend that's Uncle Dan, So, a lot of that guided me as a teacher later on is saying, well, how can I make my classroom more inclusive without going crazy? Just thinking logically about the moments where I was scared, the moments where I felt a certain way, Because even moving a lot, like, whatever. I was a kid, it's moving a lot. But I have this memory of being, when we moved to that house in Carbondale, the first night, I must have been like 8 or 9. And I was terrified because I couldn't find the light switch to use the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Okay.
And I just remember I had this feeling of terror that still lives in my brain, almost 40 years later, of me just like not knowing how to find the light switch because it was on the outside of the bathroom. So you had to go out of the... And I just, like things like that where you're like, oh, wow, I never was by 9 years old, you probably lived in a house where you could immediately find the light switch without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I still wasn't. So it's just like moments like that I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, there was some stuff there that was happening or even the bus routes, because I was going to Catholic school, because for my mom, that was the pinnacle of education in her day, was you got out of public to go to Catholic because it was a better education.
Okay.
For me, it was the reverse. It was right when all of it was on the out and they're consolidating.
Oh, interesting.
But so I had to catch a bus when we moved to this one place that was kind of still close, so I could still go to the Catholic school, but I had to get on the bus with the public kids at the end of the development, and then it would take me to another city and just drop me off by myself on the middle of Main Street in front of this professional building, and I would have to just stand there and wait for another bus to swing by and grab me. And I remember having moments of having to pee.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, what if I go behind this bush? Am I going to get in trouble? Is the bus going to miss me? And I'm like, all this traumatic stuff, and I'm like 8 having to do all of this, and it's like, man, it's insane to think about. And the one time they were going to take me to St. Mary's, but the bus driver took me to a different St. Mary's, because guess what? There's a lot of St. Mary's schools in Scranton. Yeah. So they took me to a different city, and I wouldn't get off the bus because I'm like, that's not my school. I mean, I know I go to school every year, but this is definitely not my school.
Yeah. I think moving is actually good for development in some ways. We moved in the middle of middle school, in the middle of my 6th grade year, from the New York suburbs, not quite upstate, but suburbs. And I, of course, hated it at the time because you got all your friends here. It's 1996. You don't have everyone's story on your feed every morning, right? Well, I get down to South Jersey in the Cherry Hill area, and yes, I hated it then. But what I realized, 2 things that it forced me to do. One, it forced me to read. Yep. It forced me to be able to have some relationship with books, even if it was cheesy Star Wars novels or whatever, sci-fi or something. And then 2, it's easy to get too comfortable in your own situation. It forced me to learn how to make friends from scratch 100%. After your personality has formed, right? Because when you're going to grade school with the same kids you went to first grade with, well, everyone kind of grows up siloed together, and your personality is kind of just a result of this environment. But then you get to another environment, and you're like, oh, I have to learn how to interact with people that aren't going to know me already or like me, because they grew up with me. They're going to see me as a stranger, and I have to learn how to befriend them. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it got me reading, and I think it was good for my social skills. So for anyone that's has ADHD or neurodiversity, of course, it's not going to be exciting to be in middle school hearing you have to move. Right? So it's
traumatic.
It was traumatic at the time, but it was one of those things that on retrospect, I look at as character building. So
exactly. I feel the same way.
A lot of your stuff, character building, and also, again, not to commodify your autobiography, but fodder for these stories, for content, for comedy.
Well, that's right, because you can do that. But a lot of people be like, oh, first days of lunch at that age or whatever, switching schools, and I was in public, I was in Catholic, and, definitely different vibes in those different sizes.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, was it dangerous? I'm like, it wasn't prison yard, what I mean?
Right.
I wasn't going to go up to the biggest bully and punch him in the face. I mean, first of all, Sister Doreen looked like she could take a punch, so I wasn't going to mess with her. And actually, the reason I say Sister Doreen, she was my first grade teacher, actually. And I'll never forget her, because at the school it was my first week, she made a kid who peed his pants stand in front of the class.
Brutal.
While he cried, waiting for his parents to come bring pants. And I was I was bully. That was bully tendency. I didn't feel safe. That school, I didn't feel safe. I remember having a nightmare about that school where the nuns had guns.
Oh, gosh.
And I was just so terrified that I would get sent to the office. And
did you ever have nuns that had male names? We had Sister Thomas Joseph, Sister Stephen Gerard.
No.
They were, and with the habit, right? So I guess they were probably saint names, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But just whatever that order was, they would be, they were man names and kind of man personalities, I hate to say it. You know what I mean? Very intense. It makes you think of that that scene from Blues Brothers with the nun hitting them with the ruler.
I had some of them that had that personality, but there was Sister Margot, Sister Pat,
So moving down to South Jersey, we got quieter, gentler machine gun nuns, as Neil Young would say. It was Sister. God, shout out to Sister Pat, who's still with us, and that was a more chill vibe. But it was funny going from one Catholic school situation to another, and it was just like a different level of intensity.
Yeah,
So,
and how many lay teachers there were versus none sometimes.
oh, absolutely.
Which was because I always had a mix of like Mrs. Uteg was a lay teacher at St. Rose that I had, like, you know, so yeah, so like those are so important because I know, like, you know, you as a teacher, as an educator, you know this. We have a choice every day. We can go in and be someone's Sister Doreen, or we can go in and be someone's Mrs. Uteg.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's the choice we have.
That's the choice.
And that's what I try to remind myself of, because I don't know what those kids are coming into my room about. And the ones who are vociferous about something.
Yeah.
Well, I had moments when I was in 5th, 6th, 7th after my dad tried to get custody of me and all that tumultuous stuff that was happening. I became the problem kid. I became the kid crying for attention. I told my dare officer I was on heroin just to like get a rise out of him during the thing, like just to be like a prick. You know?
How did that end up?
Oh, he's like, I'm going to take you for drug testing. He pulled me out in the hall and like tried to like talk to me one-on-one so I wasn't putting on a show for everybody, which is the smart thing to do.
Right, right.
And then he ended up getting kicked off the force for drunk driving. But, you know, that happens.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. But like I was the kid then that was like, oh, I would be the one to give the finger when they turned to the board and like have all the kids laugh. Like I was willing to do. And then in 6th grade, I skipped so much school because I hated Mrs. Coleman and I thought she was just mean and out to get me. So I was like, and because
you want to be a good formative memory for these guys.
Yeah, so it was just like, I was acting out.
Either you want to be forgotten, or if you have to be remembered, be a positive memory.
Well, so like the kids that become loud in my class or something like that, I try to find things that they're positively doing in the class, so that they can focus on that. I'm like, you need to, if you want to be silly and do that, then you need to have these moments too.
Right.
You know, if you want a paycheck, you got to do work. You can't be at the water cooler the whole time.
Sure. Yeah.
And so like giving them these skills and thoughts of like what they need to give me, if they're going to do that, then they need to give me something of themselves and their education first. Because I can't just let you be here distracting us. We have a job to do. But if you do your job and you handle your business, there will be minutes where you can be goofy and it'll be fun and we'll have fun with it.
Absolutely.
And this year, that's all kind of playing well, knock on wood.
Yeah.
All of that's coming together, and it's been a beautiful year for me. So I hope
Awesome.
I hope you continue to have a good year too.
Thank you.
So
So far it's been great. Yeah,
do you have anything to plug before we close it out today?
I'm gonna be at Uptown in Westchester.
Yeah, love it there.
At the
Great
Nauer
venue.
Performing Arts Center.
And that's Nauer with a K, I think.
Yeah,
Like
Uptown
KN,
Nauer with a KN. Yeah, that is going to be. I want to say this would be amazing to have prepared the exact date in my head. I want to say the 2nd or 3rd Thursday in October.
Good.
Just I appreciate you, man. It's been an exciting journey back into comedy.
Heck yeah. I'm glad to have met you. I'm glad that you're coming around. You're very funny. So if anybody's in the Westchester area, the Nauer Center has a pretty easy website. If you go to Google, and you'll find his face there hosting. So in Soul Jules, you'll be back at Soul Jules at some point with me as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We got a lot of fun stuff going on. So for me, Jay Yoder Comedy, you know the deal. Follow the stuff. I got some great shows. I'm going to be with Board Teachers coming up in October in Jersey and up in Boston. And I got the Northeast PA Comedy Festival. So if you know me from the Poconos area, I'm going to be in Stroudsburg Sunday, I think October 6th. I got some Don't Tell Comedies coming up. I'm pretty booked through December. So if you want to come see me, now's the time. And thank you for listening. Thanks for taking the Jaywalk with us. Have a good day.